One of Microsoft's big announcements at this year's E3 was the unveiling of the new Elite controller, which is priced at $150. Now, some people were like, oh wow, that's really cool, a new controller. While other people were going, holy shit, $150 for a controller? That's over twice the price of the regular Xbox One controller. Why would you spend that much? Well, thankfully, I did get the chance of trying this out at the E3 show floor, so let's talk about what this one does differently and whether or not it's really worth dumping that much money on. Now, to begin with, here's some of the obvious differences right away. This one does have a rubberized grip, unlike the Xbox One controller. A lot of people are saying that this makes it so that it's not going to slip out of your hands if you're squeezing really tight, but honestly, that doesn't really happen that often with an Xbox One controller unless you have really, really sweaty hands. What's more important is the fact that when you're squeezing it, it will give just a little bit. So when you're playing for a long period of time, it's going to be more comfortable for your hands. The other big noticeable difference is that if you look at the bottom of the controller, this one has a 3.5mm audio jack, so you don't have to use just the standard Xbox One chat headset or one of those Pro headsets that plugs directly into the system. This gives you a few more options to use the headset you'd like. Now, those two changes are nice, but the real big deal about this controller is just how customizable it is. Most noticeably, the fact that it has a modular design. There's a lot of bits and pieces that you can switch in and out. First off, there are 3 different sets of control sticks you can choose from. You've got the standard concave design like you'd see on a regular Xbox One controller. There's another concave one that's taller, which is a little awkward feeling to use at first, but it does offer a greater amount of precision with movement, so especially in games like FPSs where you want to be very careful about where you look and how quickly, that's a huge deal. And third off, there is a dome shape head, which is very reminiscent of a PS3 or PS2 controller. Now, there are a lot of debates about which of these is actually better to use. Some will say that concave design gives you a better grip. Other people say that you have more precise control with a dome top. In the end, for me at least, it really just comes down to personal preference, which this does give the option of using that one or concave, or once again, that taller one. Now, along with those different joysticks, you can also switch out one of 2 different D-pads. Now, one of them just looks like the standard Xbox One controller one, which personally I've never been a huge fan of. It does offer precise control if you just want to press up, down, left, or right, which really only comes up mostly in FPS or some tactical games. The other option they've added, though, is a faceted design, which emulates 8-directional input, which is a lot more useful and way more comfortable in situations like, let's say, for fighting games, because rolling it's a lot more comfortable. This was actually my favorite change to the controller when I was trying it out. I absolutely loved the feel of that design compared to the regular plus symbol. Now, those are just the changes you'll see on the front. On the back side, you'll notice there are also 4 slots where you can add these little back paddle things. These are meant to give you additional control options. The main idea being that it gives you a way to press buttons without having to resort to your thumbs. For instance, let's say there's a game you're playing where you have to keep your thumb on the right stick for some reason, but then something comes up where you need to hit the A button. Well, instead of having to quickly move your thumb over, press A, and then go back to the stick, you can keep your thumb on the stick and then press one of those back paddles, which you've mapped to the same thing as the A button. So it's a really useful way of having a shortcut and alternate ways of controlling your favorite games. Now, in addition to all the modular pieces, there are some other ways you can customize this controller right on it. If you look at the back side, you'll notice these little switches which allow you to change the triggers from either standard mode or hair trigger mode. In hair trigger mode, it's going to stop the trigger from going down at about the halfway point, which is where actually the button is actually already being pressed. It's just letting you know. So it's a lot easier to rapid fire pull a trigger as opposed to just having it in standard mode and repeatedly hitting it, thinking you're timing it just right. There's also a switch on the front side which allows you to switch between 2 different pre-designed profiles, which you can customize in the downloadable app. Now, this software is really where the controller gets even more ridiculously customizable. One of the first things is that you can remap all the buttons. If you want to switch A and B, you can do that. If you want to have the left trigger and right trigger switch, you can do that. If you want to have clicking down on the right stick be the same thing as pressing Y, you can do that. And you can save 2 different profiles immediately on the controller, like I said, that you can switch between. So let's say you're playing a first-person shooter like Star Wars Battlefront, well, you can have profile 1 for that. But then you want to switch over to, say, Killer Instinct, a fighting game, you can switch into mode 2 where the controls are designed for that. Along with remapping buttons, the software is going to offer a few other little things you can change. For instance, you can adjust the sensitivity on sticks when you're moving them, and you can adjust how powerful the haptic feedback is in each corner of the controller. So those are all the features that it says it adds, but as far as how it goes into actual hands-on experience, I gotta say, I really like the controller. I think the faceted D-pad is a great design. I like the hair triggers. One of the things I think they did a great job, though, was hitting a perfect balance when it came to how easy it is to remove all the different modular pieces. You know, there are some gaming accessories where there's something that you can remove, but it always feels like you're gonna break it or snap it off if you're being not careful enough. With these ones, they always snapped off with just enough force, so it always felt not too hard to do, but it also didn't come off too easily, so when you're using it, there's never that fear that something's going to pop out when it's not supposed to. Now that being said, I do think the asking price of $150 is still a little ridiculous. You know, like I said earlier, that's over twice the price of a standard controller. That's almost half the price of the whole system, which includes a controller. And if you compare it to third-party Pro controllers, those normally go for about 80, 90, maybe $100. So $150 is definitely up there. You know, I think for having the ability to say it's a first-party brand controller, $120 would have been fine. That's twice the price of the controller. Totally worth paying for the customization, but $150 just feels a little bit too steep. So it really comes down to what you think it's personally worth to get this much customization. Really useful, but really, really pricey. So those are my thoughts on the new Xbox One Elite controller. It's going to be available in October at an MSRP of $150, like I said. They will work on not only Xbox One, but also on PCs that are running Windows 10. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. I'll be seeing you guys soon with more content, but until then, I'm Kevin Kenson, and I'll see you guys later.